So first thing I want to know is, Samsung makes phones, televisions, even refrigerators. I didn't know you guys had an accelerator until I was here last year. What's the program about?
Great question, and probably a great way to lead off this session. I actually just began working at Samsung about 4 months ago. I'm a designer, spent 20 years developing lots of products, hopefully some of the stuff that you guys have in your homes and pockets and bags right now. And have worked on kind of anything from environments to diapers to cell phones and software. And I never thought I would be a big company person. Never in 20 years have ever worked in a corporate environment. But literally, I found out about this, had a conversation with the guy who started it, a guy named David On, who's a ex-Google guy, an AOL guy, who had a vision about what open innovation could really be. Was recruited by Samsung, spent a year working in Seoul and Suwon, really trying to understand the culture, to the point that was made before about how do you actually sort of bring in those cultural nuances, and came up with this idea for the Open Innovation Center, which is based in Mountain View. And it has 4 arms. And the idea of the Open Innovation Center altogether is to have this sort of, I might call it like a sort of a semi-permeable membrane between Samsung, huge big company, right, $214 billion revenue a year, and the entrepreneur community. And so the way that we do that is that we are able to have touch points at any degree of maturity with a startup. So we have an acquisitions team, an investment team who's doing strategic investments, partnerships, so half of the apps that you see on our Gear watches, or the Flipboard that you might see on your phones, on your Samsung phones, are part of our partnerships group.
So that guy who was asking about the barometer, he would want the partnerships group?
Exactly.
Okay, and what else?
But this is the front door. The Open Innovation Center is the front door for entrepreneurs like yourselves and innovators who want to come into the Samsung ecosystem, who don't want to get lost in the sort of the large company. But the fourth key area, the part that I lead, is the accelerator. And what we do is we have an accelerator on University Ave in Palo Alto, and one in New York on 26th and 26th Street. And our goal is to bring in proven entrepreneurs who are seasoned, who know how to grow companies, provide incredible access to resources, funding, decision makers, and then give them the autonomy to actually be able to grow their products with that kind of laser focus on the product.
Okay, so let's start off with that question there. I forgot your name. What's your name? Michael. So Michael said that he wants to find out how to get into the accelerator and what's the criteria for getting in.
Right. So, I mean, it's kind of just a little bit of what I just covered, which is we're really looking for people who have done it a couple times. So this is an ideal situation for somebody who has had a couple of exits. They know what it's like to grow a company, to be obsessed with sort of fundraising and being passionate about their idea. They've got something that they've been noodling on that maybe they just haven't had time or haven't had a chance to really invest their time and energy in. And they're passionate about making impact. And I'd say that as a person, as a fellow product designer and entrepreneur, the key thing that I look at when I'm out there looking for entrepreneurs to bring in is that just like, the kind of that laser focus, that unbelievable passion around the product idea, around solving a particular need, not having a complete an absolute well-formed way to solve that need, but a real understanding of the consumer need, and then being able to imagine if you're able to solve that need and you could be deployed on 300 million phones in a year, like that's amazing, right?
But
so
you
it's
want an
that kind of
entrepreneur,
reach and scale.
Someone who's already done it once and maybe even twice or thrice. But really, you're looking for someone who's had multiple exits, multiple successes. So if we're new entrepreneurs in here, it may not be a good fit for us.
Well, it might be a good fit to be part of other teams.
Okay.
Because it's a great way to kind of learn about the business.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, there's
Part
such go on.
Sorry, part of another team, meaning another entrepreneur's company that's coming to work for you, or another part of Samsung?
Another team that's in the accelerator. I'm just saying
I see.
that it's an incredible access point, basically,
okay,
to have that combination experience of the startup experience with the large company. And at the end of the day, and we see this in every conversation that you have here or in the Valley or anywhere that there are burgeoning communities of entrepreneurs, is that there's such a low barrier of entry to being able to create your idea, right? I mean, it's like we really were able to spin up tools, we were able to get great teams together, but the thing that's really missing is the difficulty in getting the funding, and more importantly, the access to the right people at the distribution platforms. And so that's the thing that we're trying to solve with this hybrid model in the Accelerator.
But if I'm an entrepreneur, Michael, have you started a company and sold it? No. So if Michael wants to be a part of Samsung's Accelerator, he should go partner up with someone who has or work for someone who has, right?
Well, it's about experience, right? So we are in the Accelerator, we're the sole LP. So we are investing in staged investments. We're banking on people first. And I have to say, you know, there's a lot of like people first talk that happens out there. This is authentically people first thing, because we're looking for people who have a cultural fit, who can actually be incredible collaborators, incredibly motivated, and absolutely driven in, you know, a year or two to be able to get their product to market. So the reason why we look for people with experience is that we're looking for people who can draw on that experience. We're not saying that if you have a brilliant idea and you're new to this, that you shouldn't come and talk to us. But there may be a different way, a different model for us to collaborate.
Okay. What about, I'm sorry, what's your name? Jacob. Jacob, who wants to partner with Samsung?
Yes.
Sorry?
Parametric data, right?
Parametric data, yes.
Yeah.
And so he wants to partner with you to get data to his app and also to get his app on as many different Samsung phones as possible.
Right.
What's his way of getting the door open so he can have a conversation with someone? And I know that it wouldn't be directly with you, it would be with one of your colleagues, right?
Right.
What's the way to do that?
Yeah, so again, like I said, the Open Innovation Center, its function is to be able to address issues from the data question that you asked to you know, someone seeking Series A, to a great partner who's a little bit maybe more mature, who can go right away onto a phone or a tablet or a TV or anything, any of the platforms that we utilize. So I think that the core thing would be to understand what your product does and how there would be value in having that data, how we really are achieving something meaningful with consumers, because at the end of the day, we're sort of framed in a slightly different way than Samsung has previously been focused. So Samsung's previously made its an incredible footprint in hardware. And we are moving squarely into a more integrated world where software and hardware really have to be together. It's staggering, actually. One of the reasons that I came in as a sort of digital and software person to this is realizing that there's like 286,000 people at Samsung, and a quarter of them are working on R&D. So 67,000 people are working on R&D, and there's $14 billion every year spent on R&D. It's like, these are staggering numbers, right? So this is a company that is poised to make a huge difference, even to build on the successes so far. So for someone like you, we want to have that conversation. And the only way that we're going to achieve the same level of success in software and services and experiences is by kind of cultivating relationships with small groups of people who are coming up with amazing ideas. And so similarly to your question before, it's not that we want to exclude the conversation with seasoned entrepreneurs or unexperienced entrepreneurs. We want to continue to have that relationship over time, and maybe there's a point to work together then.
Let me take a moment away from the interview here and apologize and explain something. I am so hungry, Valerie. I mean, really, I want to do such a killer job here that Jason Calacanis runs right off the stage and goes, what is he doing on this little stage? Let's get him in there. And everyone in here, I want them all to tweet and say, this is the best guy I've ever seen do an interview. And I was so hungry to do that when I came in, I didn't properly introduce you. So why don't I start by saying that Valerie Casey is the Vice President of Innovation, General Manager, Palo Alto of Samsung Accelerator. I should have done that at the start, right? I apologize.
It's okay. I wasn't actually registered for this conference either.
I'm glad that you're here.
I don't have a badge.
Now that I've apologized with that, I should also explain that that is part of my hunger. When you say 67,000 innovators in there, the hungry entrepreneur in me, the one who wants to fight for him, for Jacob in the audience, says, how do I open the door? Is there an email address I can email someone? Is there a meetup where I can walk in? Is there Valerie office hours that, Jacob, is this useful at all? Very much. Where I could just walk in if I were Jacob, or Jacob, my friend, my new friend here, can walk in and say, here's my idea. Check out my software. Let's talk as human beings and give me some feedback about how I can be a part of it. What is the opening for Jacob to come and have a conversation, and not just Jacob, but anyone else here who doesn't have the guts that Jacob did to start the conversation? How do they do it?
Well, and this maybe goes back to your comment earlier, which is that you only found out about the Accelerator a year ago, right? So we started the Open Innovation Center a year ago, and we started the accelerators a few months ago. So we're kind of new to this, and we're actually treating the accelerator like a startup. So that's why there's kind of non-traditional people like me running these kinds of things. People who have made products more than made corporate divisions of different types of things. We don't advertise for CEOs. The reason I'm here today is that I'm hoping to meet people like you. I'm hoping to meet people who are really eager and see the potential of this. When I describe this, what the accelerator is, and everyone's like, oh, is it an incubator? Is it an innovation lab? Is it, we throw around these words all the time, to the point where they're utterly meaningless at a certain point, right? Because everyone has their random little differentiation and difference. And I just have to say, I've set up probably half a dozen innovation centers in different countries and large companies, size of Samsung. And I've never seen a particular model like this that I felt that is as promising as this model.
What makes it so different and so promising?
The key thing is actually that we're not going to demo days and saying, hey, that's a cool startup, I'm going to fund that. It's a really cool idea, I can recognize the need. Oh, and by the way, that team seems pretty good. What we're looking for is really interested people who have the potential to make a huge impact, who can leverage the biggest technology platform in the world, period. So it's people first, and then after that it is what kind of intervention can they make, and can we help them make that intervention and help them shape that. We don't have office hours, we don't go out, we don't have a booth, we don't have a thing down there, because we're not doing just general conversations. I would be happy to have a conversation with anyone in this room after this event, or in the next couple of coming weeks. You're welcome to come down and meet in Palo Alto, because it's all about that personal connection.
It's all about someone being here saying, I'm excited about Samsung products, I want to build on it, and connecting with you to meet in person.
Well, actually, one of the questions that was asked before was kind of like maybe segue to that. So we're a little bit different, and I guess that that sort of staggering statistic I threw out before, 67,000 people working on R&D in 33 research centers around the world, right? 67,000 people, it's enormous, right? That's probably at least 10 times bigger than this entire, right? How many several thousand people at this event, right?
Oh, how many?
8K, right?
8K at this event.
Right, interesting. So take 10 times of this, and those people are working on things that are 5 years out, 20 years out, 50 years out, you name it, right? So there's a huge investment in R&D. But those are all inside Samsung. They're all looking at, how can I grow the Samsung portfolio? How can I grow the line that's in TVs and connected home, and all these promising areas that all of us are really, really engaged in. What we're doing in the Accelerator and in the Open Innovation Center is we're actually engaging with people that are in the entrepreneur community outside of Samsung. So every single product that we fund, that we cultivate, that we grow within the Accelerator has got to be relevant to consumers in the marketplace. This isn't about filling gaps in Samsung portfolio. We have enough resources and assets to do that. That's not what this program and this intervention is about. What we're really doing is taking the best of breed from what we know about how to grow great services and great experiences, how to really pair those up with actual consumer needs that are relatable, that are nascent, that are emerging, and actually create the conditions for products to actually meet those needs.
All right, let's see if anyone else here, who came here for a specific purpose? I want to help you get there. Show of hands if you're yes, I'm going to walk over to you and get the mic over. What's your name?
My name's Tara Kelly. My company is Splice. We do customer experience, so a data-driven dialogue is our trademark. We signed up for your SEAT program, which is a partner program about retail kiosks. We have hundreds of devices capturing profile data that feed our data-driven dialogue in the US and retailers. I want to know if you are in that mid-range. I'm cash flow positive, but not, screamingly huge, but 7 digits. So I'd consider myself at an inflection point, and I still need to be massively accelerated. Do you want to talk?
Absolutely. I probably am you're probably more mature than what I would be looking for in the Accelerator, but I would love to put you in touch with our strategic investments group. And what they do, so strategic investments, order of magnitude of a couple $1 million, right? Or a little bit more. But if you think about a company the size of Samsung, that's not really impacting the bottom line. What's really impacting the bottom line is the relationship with somebody like you, who, if positioned well, could potentially leverage what we have to offer in terms of the platform. So that's what the kind of the magic is about those relationships, rather than a typical VC model that's looking for a return on that investment very quickly.
All right, and is the best way for her to reach you to just come over and talk to you afterwards?
Yeah, I have
right.
cards in a bag somewhere.
Congratulations, too, on doing so well. Who else? Yeah, right here.
Hey, my company is XTouch, and we have a brand new technology to make any surface tap sensitive by just placing your smartphone on that surface. We just launched, and I was wondering, I would be interested to know what Samsung thinks of that technology.
Of a technology that does, what does it do?
You know what XTouch does? One of your guys gave me a demo earlier. You put your device right at the center of the table, and then it makes the table that it's on touch sensitive. So you can play a game where you tap the table, right? And the device picks up on it.
Wow. That
you haven't launched
amazing.
yet? Oh, yeah, they're launched. They're in the store.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, I think, you know, like if you asked all of, each person answered it like a survey and said, what are your top 8 or 10 things you're interested in, I bet that 90% of the answers would overlap, right? We're all kind of interested in the same area. We're all you know, participating in this inflection point when data is enabling different relationships, when technology brings us together in sort of small communities, when health all of a sudden has become something that's like out of the clinical setting, but not just for people who are motivated and well already, you know, which is kind of where we are with the quantified self at the moment. So all of these areas are emerging in like a fascinating way. And that's why I think that, of course, we would be interested in that, because it relates to connected home, it relates to environmental kind of programmable spaces. But I think that one of the things that I would say as a person who's 20 years as a designer and focused on user experience is, what is the specific need that's being solved by that? So amazing technology, but then the use case, the really compelling use case, is the most important thing that engages me in a conversation, you know? Because the thing is that we could just create a funnel for interesting technologies into Samsung, but that's not really what we're trying to do with the Open Innovation Center. What we're trying to do is say, hey, there's small groups of people who are creating really novel solutions to real needs, like things that you don't just say like, oh, this is my N of 1 experience and I have a real hard time with taking notes on a PDF. It's got to, you know, there are bigger, higher order challenges that we're trying to solve here. And so being captivated and focused on those user needs and those consumer needs is really what we have this particular moment in time to focus on. So I would love to talk to you about how that technology works. And again, I think that, I don't know if what you've built your app on, but another thing to highlight is not only in the Accelerator are we not focused on Samsung products, right? So what we're trying to do is solve those needs for users. It doesn't matter if they're on iOS or Android or Tizen, it's got to solve that need. And if Samsung is part of the equation, that startup gets amplified in a way and distributed in a way that really makes them, could make them extraordinarily successful. But if Samsung wasn't in the equation, it should still be a really viable, compelling, standalone business.
So I know that he's going to come and talk to you after we're done. But I'm really sensitive to the people who are behind the camera, who are watching from home, partially because for a long time I couldn't afford to come to a conference like this. I couldn't make it over to San Francisco. If they want to connect with you, what's a good way for them to do it?
Well, the simplest answer to that is probably we have a website, samsungaccelerator.com. There's not a ton of information on that. Again, our products that we have in the Accelerator, we're in stealth mode. We tend to not publicize all this because a lot of the people are from that we are engaged with are from our networks and events like this and sort of serendipitous connections. But if you've listened to this conversation and you say, gosh, I fill so many of those criteria and I want the chance to make an impact at that scale in a really resource-rich environment with those sorts of direct connections to decision makers at Samsung, but I know that this is like an awesome product by itself, then the email would be a great way, and you can just say, put in the email that you saw me here and us on stage having this conversation.
What's the email address?
sam@samsungaccelerator.com.
sam@samsungaccelerator.com. All right. What do you do at Samsung? Sorry. Is this okay for me to do? Yeah, sorry. So one of the things that I keep checking in with people to see how I did at the last events, and at the last interview that I did, I called up someone who worked with the investor who I talked to, and I talked to him, and people freaking loved it because he was more accessible. So can I ask you to stand up and just say what your name is and have people get to know you? Is this okay?
It's fine. Amanda, why don't you just stand up and wave, and then I will be standing with Amanda afterwards, and if you want to connect, we certainly can connect then.
All right, is this okay to do? Thank you. I saw you taking photos. I appreciate it. Yes, you.
I think a lot of us would love to hear an example or at least a general description of what these new and higher problems would be, because you have a lot of creative minds here, and if they understood more of what the vision might be, they could direct their imagination in that way.
All right. Good question.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great comment. It's a tricky line for me to walk because I find that when I'm in conversation with people that are interested in getting into the accelerator, and I say, hey, there are these 4 areas: connected home, connected car, Internet of Things, and enterprise mobile solutions. People then all of a sudden start to filter all of their great ideas to meet those categories I've put out. And if you are an entrepreneur and you are trying to get an idea about what somebody wants you to do, then you're probably not going to have the passion and vision yourself to carry a product through that was from your own kind of mind and heart. So I'm a little reluctant to do that. I think that the higher order needs, as a product designer, and I'll speak just as a person, I'll speak as Valerie Casey, not as a representative of Samsung. The things that I'm really interested in are, we have this moment, this platform, largest technology platform in the world, and like you said before, PCs and tablets and phones and appliances and all sorts of things. That's an enormous advantage, right? So all of those things can be connected together to create great effect, and whether that effect is cultural or social or using a new technology that is going to change people's behavior or motivate them to behave in a more collective way, or sort of build community, or any of those things, new teaching tools, new reading tools, ways to think about literacy in new ways. All of those things are, I believe, what our sort of social contract between Samsung and the world is, right? It is not just to create like another app and another small intervention or a gimmick or something that's around for now that you said, oh, that was really cool, but can't remember 6 months later. So we will have a spectrum of different kinds of products and services that we'll launch, and some of them will be some of the more the kinds of products that will solve an immediate need that you'll say, oh yeah, in 2020 in hindsight, yeah, I completely understand why you would do that. Other things are going to be kind of more adventurous and more pushing the limits. And so the whole idea is that the people that we're talking to are motivated enough and are passionate enough about those kinds of problems and those kinds of solutions that they can actually build them in a way that is really focused on making products.
All right. I'll come to you. I saw Roman first. Roman, what's up?
You were talking about the vision of Samsung about smart homes, and I was wondering how big part of, or what's the part of maximizing human potential, performance of knowledge workers? What part is that? What part of your vision? Is there a direction that you've explored, perhaps? Creating smart environments that would maximize the performance of knowledge workers.
Right. Great question. I'm not the right person to talk to about Samsung's vision or Samsung's strategy in smart homes or on any topic, actually. Because what we're trying to do in the Open Innovation Center and at the Accelerator is trying to meet the needs of people, right? So if we had a recognized need for knowledge workers in the smart home space or a programmable space, and a solution or an entrepreneur came to us with a kind of an experienced and proven background and said, I really want to tackle this area. I think that there are 3 different ways I could tackle it. We would be very engaged in listening to that. So I can't represent what Samsung at large is looking at. What I'm really looking at is viable products and services and experiences that are going to make a difference in people's lives, that solve problems that are recognizable, separate from Samsung. And when we put the drops of Samsung into the equation, then the impact can be enormous.
All right. Yes, I'll come over. No, come on, you should get on mic.
To build on some of the comments you were making, I'm just curious, how would you specifically define success within the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months, and then what are the challenges you face to get there?
I would define success as in a couple of different ways. Like I said, we just started. So we're building this concept. One of the concepts that we have within the Accelerator is this notion of the 80-20 rule, where each of our teams, led by a CEO or co-founders, work on their products for 80% of the time, and the 20% of the time is spent working with the others. And so we have a kind of a very cooperative, really interesting model where there's a great knowledge share across those Accelerator teams. And one of the reasons that they're enabled to do that is that we are picking a diverse set of portfolio teams, right? But there are ones that seem to overlap and are close together. But everyone succeeds when one of us succeeds. And I think that this is true in innovation and technology as well. All of the different companies and startups that are engaged in this space, when one of us makes a step forward, the others can build on it. And that's sort of the philosophy. So in the case of the Accelerator, those teams then are also building the Accelerator as a startup model. So we don't have particular metrics of success because we are a startup as well. I would say, we have particular metrics of success, meaning that we want to launch companies that are extremely strong in terms of meeting consumers' needs, that create incredible software experiences and services. Ideally, we're really focused on getting teams in staged investments. At each stage of their growth, we would be supplying that sort of appropriate amount of funding and support. And you can imagine that teams would be in the Accelerator for between a year or two, and then be able to launch either for a spin-out or to be acquired within Samsung. And that is really a measure of success. The other part of it, I think, is that we have an incredibly successful company that has spent many years building remarkable hardware products, but the software process is incredibly messy, and it's iterative, and it's experimental. And so those qualities, those cultural qualities, are magical when they're being cross-pollinated across the organization. And so I think that part of our function is really that organizational behavior function as well. So we can illustrate by building remarkable products quickly, and in that we can show that this other cultural way of doing things or other model or process of doing things can actually be really effective as well.
All right, how about one last one? Yeah, I see two. Let's see if we can get to them. Yeah, I'll come over to the back. I like the bow tie. What's your name?
I'm Jan. I'm a big follower of you, by the way. Thank you. So a couple of questions. One is, two of the biggest acquisitions in the Valley have been by entrepreneurs who wouldn't fit your criteria, as I'm thinking of WhatsApp and Nest, even though the people were relatively accomplished in their prior career. So I'd like for you to respond to that. So that's number one. And then the second one is I'd like to understand specifically, since you don't necessarily speak for Samsung, what would you add beyond sort of capital and advice, or is there a pathway into maybe getting distribution on Samsung phones or television? And yeah. Maybe you addressed that, but I just want to hear it more specifically, since you may not be the biz dev arm of the TV group at Samsung or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and thank you. And I'll start with your second question. So I don't speak for Samsung corporate, although I work for Samsung, but I wouldn't be the best person to talk about that sort of vision in terms of product strategy. So one of the things that we can do within the Accelerator, in addition to funding, is provide a resource-rich environment. So when entrepreneurs come in, they go through a pretty intense vetting process where we really help them articulate their concept that they come in with. We are the sole LP, so we are that sort of trusted advisor, and we help to mentor around product strategy. But the thing that is incredibly important about this relationship between the entrepreneurs in the Accelerator and Samsung at large is that if you're working on something that requires barometric data or other kind of data or a product roadmap in TV, you actually have access to that kind of Samsung intelligence. So you know what's coming down the pike next in terms of what Samsung is planning to do. So that's a kind of a very close relationship, and that's when we talk about resource-rich, we're talking about information-rich environment. The second key part is the access to decision makers, the right decision makers. And what may take people, months, if not years, to get access to the person who is the right person in a particular division to talk to, or even the CEO of mobile, or whomever it is, we have that direct access. And so in that way, the Open Innovation Center is positioned incredibly well within this enormous organization that is Samsung. I think that when people come in and they say, I really am passionate about my idea and I want to make impact, I would like to focus on building my product. I don't want to spend, like I did in the last 3 startups I've had, I don't want to spend all my time trying to raise money or all my time trying to get downloads in the App Store so that I can raise money and prove that people are actually using my product. We engage with, we support products that have real users and that people are actually making sure that they are listening to those users and looking for that data and then adjusting the products. But at the end of the day, the person who says, I would, like the idea of being on 420 million mobile units next year is incredible. Like, that is mind-blowing, because that's about impact. That's not about like sales numbers. It's not about installs. That is about having your world-changing idea actually deployed at a scale that none of us in this room could do without that relationship. And so that's what I think is the most compelling part of it. And now I can't remember what the first question is, but I think we...
I think we are. Well, Thank you so much for doing this. How about a big round of applause for Valerie? Thank you.